Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending about where you are. Thank you very much for joining us, and we are glad to have you with us today. If you're watching this app growth panel on our demand, then welcome and hello again. You're also very welcome to be here. With all these things, we're not exactly sure if you can hear us and see as well. So if you can you please just drop a quick response in the chat so we know that you guys can hear us as well. Amazing, thank you. We're going to give the audience a couple of minutes to get sort of settled and comfortable and connect before we sort of kick off the discussion. So as we wait, let's get to know each other a little bit better. Please share in the chat where you're watching us from, as well as based on today's topic is all about mobile gaming. What mobile games are you currently playing? I'm personally currently playing the Pokemon trading game TCG Live, and I've also recently rediscovered a love for Angry Birds too. So if you're here, you're one of our attendees, please in the chat drop your favorite game and where exactly you're listening to us from today. So I can see from the chat here we've got June's Journey from somebody from Berlin. I haven't heard of June's Journey, so it sounds like I'm actually getting a great list of games that I can play in the future. We've got somebody from East Tennessee, and they love sort of mini crossword puzzles. I've been also play one of those ones where you have to like fill in the gaps. You get numbers. It's sort of like a Sudoku where it makes an artwork at the end. I just find that very therapeutic. I play it just before I go to bed. Probably not the best time to play that. And Cody White Solitaire for mobile. That is a phenomenal choice of game. Cannot fault that whatsoever. We'll give people maybe another minute or so, and then we'll start digging into the conversation. Uber, that is a game I'm not so much familiar with. Uber Eats, I am much more successful with that game, and the best thing about that is you typically get a prize of a meal afterwards as well. So do play that one quite a lot. Excellent. We're sort of people are still trickling in. We are a couple minutes in now, so I might start introducing myself. So once again, I want to quickly start with a welcome to everyone. We're happy to have you here at the SplitMetrics App Growth Panel. Today's topic is growing in mobile gaming, the hot trends of 2024. My name is Ben Collins-Jones, and I'm a solution specialist here at SplitMetrics. I will be your host for today. I will be telling some bad jokes and generally asking questions to the panelists here. I can only apologize for one of them, and that is, of course, the bad jokes. As you know, SplitMetrics is a global company offering an ecosystem of enterprise-grade products and services that serve as a growth engine for mobile businesses. An Apple Search Ads partner with a dedicated team of 160 experts, 160 plus experts. We've added some more this week who live and breathe mobile app growth. SplitMetrics is obsessed with making its customers successful, and I would love for you all to help me in joining in welcoming our panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Faith Price, Director of Growth Marketing at DoubleDown Interactive. Welcome, Faith. Please introduce yourself. And is there a game you're currently playing?
Hi, Ben. Thank you for having me on the panel. As you said, I'm Faith Price. I've been in mobile gaming now for 10 years. I'm currently the Director of Growth Marketing at DoubleDown Interactive, which means that I manage the user acquisition team, which encompasses ASO, SEO, user acquisition, and retention, as well as the user engagement team, which communicates with players throughout the life cycle in the game via social media, email, and push. I'm involved in several games at the moment. My favorites are the cat game and Top Troops. So kind of two different spectrums of the genre.
Thank you very much. And I am actually writing down the names of these games because by the end of it, my phone's going to be full of some brand new games for me to play this week. Thank you so much, Faith. Our next panelist is Hilit Miodusu. I apologize. I don't know if I got that quite right. Chief of Strategic Growth at YouAppi. Hi, how are you? What games are you playing? I know you're joining us from a very chilly New York today.
Yeah. Although I'm in a cozy and warm room, so I'm ready to go. So I'm super excited to be here. And my name is Hilit. As you mentioned, I'm the Chief Strategic Growth at YouAppi. YouAppi is essentially a DSP for retargeting. We are part of an Apple group and were acquired around 6 months ago. So a lot of definitely exciting times and a lot to share. I would just maybe share about myself. I'm in the mobile and actually web industry for, wow, it will probably expose my age, but I probably would say around 18 years or so. I've been with YouAppi for over 7 years, and I was the first person to come to actually develop the retargeting product on the product business side and grow. So super happy to be here to see where things took YouAppi and the industry that evolved amazingly, and I'm happy to be part of it. The game that I'm playing most, unfortunately or not, but it's Brawl Stars, just because I have 2 kids, 10 and 13, and I don't have any other choice. That's in front of me all day long. So I'm getting better.
It's an exceptional choice of game. That's one I do know. I have played that myself. I wish I could say I have small children being responsible for it. No, it's just me. That's my maturity level. Last, by no means least, David Vargas. He's a senior UA manager at SplitMetrics agency. Please extend your welcome to David in the chat. David, how are you? Please introduce yourself.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. I don't know if you can hear me well. I hope yes. Yeah, I think I'm the youngest here, so I'm not having that experience for sure, but I'm trying and I'm getting better and better. So yeah, in order to give you a bit of background about myself, I've been working in the app industry in overall over 6 years, basically since I finished my studies here in Spain. I'm currently working, as Ben said, as a UA manager at SplitMetrics agency, which is one of the business verticals of SplitMetrics, where we basically offer app growth services to any company in the world. And regarding gaming, I've been playing video games for a very long time, basically since as a child. But in mobile, now I'm quite addicted to Clash Royale. 4,500 caps. So if someone wants to fight against me, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, David. I mean, I'll absolutely try, but by sound of things, I will be significantly ill-advised to maybe attack you in Clash Royale. Excellent. Thank you so much to our talented group of experts, and thank you very much for being here today. And I'm very excited to hear some of your insights about some of the questions that we'll be covering. Now, before we start, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. We have prepared a set of questions for today's session. However, we also welcome your participation chat. If there are any questions that you'd like to add or any questions you'd like to ask our panelists, please put that into the chat. We will either respond to them during today's session or we'll capture them at the end and make sure you get your answers to those sort of burning questions in due course. We also have a dedicated team in the chat as well, who'll also be happy to provide responses as and when those questions come up. We are recording today's session as well, so if when we're sending the recording to the registrants as well, so if you are unable to capture all the maybe pieces or want to maybe come back to some of the answers, there'll also be that recording to capture that finally at the end. We'd also have prepared a set of polls that will be introduced at various stages through our discussion. We would love you to take a moment to share your responses, and we will look at them and sort of look at the answers as we go. And I believe actually this is the first time we'll be using one of those polls. So event team, please launch the first one for us. I'll quickly read it off. Which UA channels are you planning to focus on in 2024 for your mobile game? And there are a whole selection of options there. The one that I am going to draw attention to is the very last one. If you have a other, please do include in the chat what that other might be. Excellent. While we submit those answers and get them analysed, we will then move on to the first question. Since the pandemic, the mobile gaming industry has been a challenging market. I was researching for today's session and stumbled upon a mobile gaming report from Data AI. The report shows that in 2023, there's been a bit of a dip, about 2% in worldwide downloads from the year before. And it's not just downloads. Consuming spending has followed the same trend and is also dropping another further 2% from 2022. My first question to our panelists: which market trends and consumer behavior shifts are shaping mobile gaming right now? And how are they influencing user acquisition and retention strategies and budget? And Faith, you're going to be our first volunteer slash answer to this question. What's your thoughts?
So, I think what the report is showing is what publishers are really seeing, right? Like there's a lot of challenges in the past couple of years, and they are continuing into 2024. Like our industry is not sort of static and alone. Like we're seeing the result of, I think, consumers with less discretionary income. They're dealing with things like inflation. And I think what we're seeing is that, first-time purchase conversions for many publishers, like it's either first-time purchase conversions are dropping or potentially like the average purchase price is going down. Now, the corollary challenge on the other side is that install costs continue to rise. I was reading an article that said that a lot of UA managers in their conversations with different media channels, the big question is always, okay, well, what is your budget going to be in 2024? How much are you going to essentially spend on our platform? And I will say we are seeing that as well in all of the conversations we're having. And so, publishers are sort of stuck in the middle, right? Like IAPs don't increase and the value of the consumer doesn't increase. Like we don't keep up with inflation, for example. The IAP pricing is set very specifically to appeal to a consumer. And so that's why I think we're seeing trends like a big increase in exploring third-party and alternative app stores, and a big push especially towards web, creating web versions of games, pushing, to where you actually have a deeper relationship with the consumer via your site, and really get to have that more of that first party, direct consumer experience without another layer between you. So and also that's where there's really a better return on spend. One of the things that I didn't see listed in the poll, which is another area where I think we see a lot of movement, is in CTV, right? It's a sort of a basic principle to go where your consumer is, and there's been a huge growth in streaming over the past 4 years. Obviously, it started with sort of some of the younger demographic, but it is continuing to grow with and age up. I give an example that my dad actually watches Mr. Beast, and he is completely not the demographic, but there he is on YouTube, and my mom consumes so much YouTube content about like pet rescue. And so, like the streaming, both for short form and for like the long form content, Amazon Prime just announced like it's all ad tiers now. Like we're going to see that continue to grow because that's where the users are spending a lot more time. And I think also one of the outcomes of the privacy change is that there's less ability to granularly track your spend. So there is more willingness to spend on things like out of home, brand marketing, channels where you, again, only get maybe upper funnel metrics. So, and I think some of the values of that too is you do get retention mixed in with that. So, I think most game publishers now do have a retention budget and a separate, UA budget, but it's also nice to find these new channels where you can go, where you can see both, right?
No, I think thank you very much for your comments there. I think your point around pushing to web is very interesting because actually using the example Brawlhalla we've already mentioned today, I know that has a mobile version as well as a web version, as well as a console version. So there is this much bigger cross section of what is a mobile game now, right? Which I think was a very interesting point. I am going to say the sentence that I've always wanted to say. I'm now going to throw to New York because that's something I've always wanted to say. Hilliard, can you what are your views on this sort of what's influencing user acquisition and retention strategies?
Yeah, actually, I'll connect, I think, directly to to the great insights, Faith, that you mentioned. I think that one of the main trends that we're seeing, there's a few definitely, but one of the main trends is actually, I'll start with maybe prioritizing. So there are a lot of needs to go and be more creative in terms of the channels and the strategies. And as mentioned, IAPs are not growing, downloads are being extremely high, competition is high. So I see that, the clients that we work with, the developers, are trying to find more channels and sources to actually be able to increase the unique reach of course, the whale users, but not only, and I'll speak to that a little bit after. So CTV is definitely a great example. I think for me, I want to say that I'm most enthusiastic in 24 about CTV, especially, by the way, for gaming publishers, speaking of. So definitely CTV rising is definitely another trend. I want to say that another trend that I'm seeing is a lot of casual or mid-core type of developers that are actually moving into, by the way, speaking about Roll Stars and a lot of similar titles that are actually moving themselves into having in-app purchases, IAA, as part of their monetization and not only relying on other monetization models. So that's also a trend that we're seeing, and therefore a rising need for retargeting, retention, remarketing on top of the user acquisition growth. And maybe to summarize that, in order to make sure that you're actually able to connect the dots between all the different channels that the developers are actually using, I think that transparency is definitely super important. Lately, we've been in conversations with tier one, very relevant, of course, similar to DoubleDown, for example, and King and Playrix and Rovio and all these definitely tier one developers. And one of the first things that we're being asked is transparency and an uplift, incrementality, to be able to actually understand what is the uniqueness, reach in terms of uplift, what is the revenue uplift. So enough speaking about, only impressions and outopens and clicks as KPIs, but very much deep in the funnel, uplift metrics, which are a need and a demand coming from all the developers this year.
Thank you very much. David, I'm going to ask you as somebody who's working with various brands, is there anything else you'd like to add to that kind of point, or would you like to reinforce?
Sure. So I've been lucky to live like the all but good days of the gaming industry, where everyone was like doing great. Campaigns were like performing super good. ROAS was positive for everyone. It's true that COVID was like a tough season for everyone, for humanity in general. But during this season, app companies were growing like crazy. That's the reality, right? Then after COVID, Scan was launched, Scan 3.0 went live, and then everything changed like suddenly for everyone. We saw how companies started to shift the budget from iOS to Android just because they were not able to track campaigns performance properly, right? Then we had the war, inflation, economic, like a very unstable economic situation that pushes companies to decrease expenses and investments into UA, which is my field at least. In general, I saw how a lot of companies had to decrease overall investments in UA at least, because as Faith mentioned, inflation was going up, users were spending less, and the balance was not like fair enough for the industry, right? Then we have now more stable year in front of us. I think I believe that we are entering maybe in the end of the declining trend that we have been seeing over the last 3 years. But with Scan 4.0, which is already live, Google Privacy Sandbox around the corner, I think that the situation, it is what it is, right? So we have to live with these limitations. We have to adapt to these limitations in data, these limitations to measure the performance of your investments in UA, but not in UA, but also in retention, in ASO, in different alternatives to grow you up, right? And I think that the companies that are willing to hustle the most in order to build like a data framework to create a complete but an overall picture about the app health, like the app business, those companies will be the ones that will succeed, in my opinion. A/B testing is nowadays more important than ever, in my opinion. Only those companies that continuously test different approaches, different strategies in order to grow, not only in mobile maybe, but also in web, for example, those companies will be the ones that will survive, because privacy limitations are here to stay, that's for sure.
Thank you very much. I can see there's a fair number of questions coming into the chat, so thank you very much. Just to reiterate, if we don't get to them today, we will make sure we respond to them in the follow-up emails after the event. But before we go into our next question for our panelists, I do believe we're going to just have a quick look at the results from that first poll. Looking at that from the top level, the top sort of 2 comments are what UA channels you're planning to focus on. Social media advertising and app store optimization are sort of dominating the votes there. Quickly to our panelists before we move on, is there anything there surprising you, either not getting selected a lot or not getting selected at all? I think based on your reactions, that's exactly what you're seeing. So that's fine. That's good to know. Okay, before we jump into the next question, we do have our second poll, which actually feeds directly into the next question anyway. But if you're in chat, please do answer. What is the biggest challenge when creating ad creatives and for your mobile games and apps? We'll leave that up there for a few minutes while you guys have a chance to answer. And while you do that, we will then move into the next question. In a crowded mobile gaming market, ad creatives are key to grabbing user attention. I've read that on average, media placements only account for about 30% of a brand's campaign success, or the creative drives 70%. Panelists, could you share some best practices for beautiful, impact, and engaging ad creatives that will resonate with the right audience in 2024? And we're going to sort of do this in reverse order now. David, we did just listen to you speak, but I'm going to ask you again. What's your answer to this question?
I mean, I will talk about how I approach this process, okay? In my opinion, the first thing that you must do when you want to create like engaging assets is to check your competition. If you go to any subcategory within mobile gaming, you will find at least 3, 4, 5, or even more big companies, big players that are investing an insane amount of time, resources, and people to create the best engaging content out there. So for me, looking at the competitors is like the first great source of inspiration and ideas for my own iterations, for my own creatives. That's 100% sure. And you have like great libraries out there, like Facebook Ads Library, TikTok Ads Library, Google Ads, Transparency Center. I mean, the sources to spy your competitors are endless, and they are always investing money, more than you, like almost secure. So that's a great source of inspiration. Then I've been seeing like a change in the trends over the last 2-3 years, I would say. For example, 2 years ago, something like that, a very hot trend started, which was the trend of fake ads. This trend has been like pushing all the social media like crazy, but it's true that that this trend is eventually ending, because now, for example, if we go to Twitter, they are already warning the users about those fake ads. They are adding a caption below the ads warning to the users that the video that they are watching is not corresponding to the gameplay, right? That's why I think these measures are like the next steps to stop this trend. Then we also have the trend of fail versus win. I think that class Match Royale is like the best company doing that, because they are all the time introducing this concept. And in most of the times, you will watch the failed version, because after many A/B tests over the last 2 years, the failed version engaged the user much better, because it invites the user to play the game in order to surpass the video that they just watched, right? And then as an overall recommendation, I would say that you must focus on your gameplay. You must stand out main advantages of your gameplay. And if you have resources, I really recommend producing UGC content. Most of mobile game companies are targeting a young audience from 20 to 30 something, 35, it depends on the game. So this UGC content is the best format for social media platforms because it looks like organic content. And that's why you normally see much better results when you mix this gameplay plus UGC using an actor, an actress, or AI solutions, like we will talk later, I guess. In my opinion, though, this concept will like determine the next trend, like this will be the future over the next 2-3 years. We are already seeing a lot of UGC content, and from my experience, I've been seeing clients reducing CPIs over 40% only because they started to produce this content, because it's the best format for social media, right? And then as a next recommendation, I would say you must analyze all the KPIs that will tell you which elements are the winnings for each part of the creative. In this case, let's talk about videos. You must analyze hook rate, engagement rate, hold rate, the through plays, the 3-second views, because this information will tell you the elements that work the best during the first 3 seconds. For example, if you look at the hook rate, you will see which video has the highest hook rate. That means that that video has maybe the best combination of music plus actor plus a piece of gameplay. Those elements should be iterated continuously on an ongoing process to get the best performance from your campaigns. That's my approach here.
Thank you very much. I actually wrote a few things down there, just because I thought they were very interesting points. And you're talking about this sort of social media approach of where users are sort of fact checking or providing their own feedback loop on these quote unquote fake ads. I think it's a very interesting point. A good host will never correct a guest. However, you did call it Twitter, and I believe it's now called X. So I unfortunately can't let that one go. We'll have to call it X, not Twitter. Moving over to Hello, what's your view on what my colleague David just said, and is there anything that you would like to sort of add on to that?
Yeah, so I think I'll continue directly from measurements. Again, I mentioned that I think in the first trend, and connect that because nothing today, no A/B testing will actually go without measurement. And when I'm saying about, like, when I'm talking about measurement, is to make sure that you're A/B testing, but also able to measure the success. And as David mentioned, every piece in the creative. And I think that this is definitely a key to go to that resolution. I think that one of the best practices that I can share as YouAppi, what we wanted to bring into the table, we are focused on gaming. It's, I would say, probably a massive percentage of our business. And what we decided to do is not to lean only on the studios of the developers themselves, because they're, very, very busy, and there's backlogs and resources, and they're working with crazy amount of vendors. So I think that one of the first best practices that I can mention is that we created our own creative studio in-house. And I think that an important point to point out there is that when you do such a thing, it's not only a designer, but it's a designer that comes with the media. So it has that connection, very, very close connection and relationship with the media team and the client itself. A lot of the best practices that I've been seeing in the recent year is definitely the creatives and the work that we are doing as part of the studio, being creative in terms of the templates. A best practice would be to just make sure that you have very unique templates that you can actually go and try and A/B test different aspects of the creative. Because we're working with gaming, I think that specifically for gaming, it's so important to make sure that you're personalizing, meaning that because we're talking about segmentation and audiences and making sure that you're fitting that need of the end user at the end of the day, but we know about these users and what is the last level that they were at, what is the tool that they need, what do they need to achieve the access to the next stage or have the next transaction. So it's super, super important to make sure that you're fitting the creative to that stage and having an element with a logo, with a call to action, with that specific stage in the flow, and not just have a generic ad. And I think that this is definitely very important. In terms of maybe some best practice and recent, so cadence, and how are we actually advising to replace and to A/B test? So not too much, but not too few, I would say. So probably every 2-3 weeks, adding a variation. And again, also here, not go crazy. Make sure that you're able to actually always monitor and evaluate what you do. Don't do anything that you're not able to measure and value. And that is definitely, I think, leading the trends this year. So definitely that would be my best value, is to be creative and to use the vendors if they do have creative studios, because they have unique placements. And with that, they're able to actually secure unique placements, higher reach, and most important, lower bids that will influence ROI.
I absolutely love that answer. Don't do anything that you can't track. And I think that's actually a really important message that I just want to repeat again, because I think it's an important piece to follow. Faith, I can already see that you've been sort of banging the drum for the importance of user retention when it comes to sort of your customer journey. But you are an expert in the sort of customer journey and lifecycle management. I'd love your insights on sort of how to adapt creatives throughout a player's lifecycle. And additionally, if you could provide any insights into how to facilitate knowledge between, I guess, different teams, be it user engagement, product marketing, and user acquisition teams, I guess, to make sure you're preventing any kind of silo situation in any of these teams.
Yeah, and I think that is a big risk that I've seen, working at multiple game companies, is these things can be very siloed. And one of the things that we've been practicing at DoubleDown is trying to be as collaborative as we can across different teams. And so so I'll actually start, I guess, with the last part first, which is how can you do more sharing and more knowledge? And I think it starts with really just the principle that we're all in this together and we all want to win. And so it's all about how can we help each other no matter what department we're in. So we do a lot of collaborative meetings where everybody from where each channel will present like what's working well for them. So email will present, somebody who's managing Facebook might present. So everybody specific for either their paid channels or their organic channels will present what's working well. And then you brainstorm across like, how can you then translate that message? So for example, a standard casino retention message is to come back to get up to a certain amount of chips, which is something that is generally a very successful, because you're talking about like, what is it that the consumer wants in a casino product? It's mostly chips or coins. And so that's been a very successful sort of paid retention message for a long time. But until we started doing brainstorms, it wasn't translated to like, how can we utilize that across non-paid channels? And so, we're starting to do like testing like that. Like, let's have a consistent value for the lapsed player across all of the different methods of communication. And from the engagement side, they're more about sort of like fun things that you can do. And so we've started to say, well, how can we take some of that and potentially, run it to maybe what we're doing with ASO, or maybe what we're doing with user acquisition. And even further, getting product marketing involved and saying, okay, you've got in-app pop-ups, in-app messaging. How can we then translate, on a very basic level, like the colors, the characters, the verbiage. And so we just want to create for the user like a consistent journey from when they first see a message about the game, all the way through when they're then playing the game and maybe have been in the game for days, months, years. And I think what's been even more interesting is we've started to do that, to apply this collaborative methodology to how do we work with larger game events, right? So if we're going to do an event in the game around a holiday that lasts like a week or two, how can we message that out from user acquisition all the way through. So I think it's everything needs a little tweak. That's why, like, I say, absolutely, David and Halit were talking about testing. Like, absolutely nothing is going to translate exactly the same from an email message to to like a paid, maybe in-app message. So we have to do a lot of testing and tweaking around, like, how does this message relate to somebody wherever they are in their journey? But we've been seeing a lot of success, and we've been getting a lot of learnings around like what people respond to just by doing these, these more collaborative and sharing events.
Excellent. Thank you for the comments there. I was sort of lost in the joy of everyone talking about gaming and talking about this industry on a much sort of deeper level. So thank you so much for that. I think we are going to look at the results of the second poll now, which, to repeat again, was what was the biggest challenges you faced when creating ad creatives for your mobile game or app? And a lot of it actually seems to be a combination of it's across the board, but the big ones there being conceptualizing creative ideas, budget constraints, and that user engagement piece. So I think that we've talked a little bit about some of the things that we can sort of help tackle those. And if there are further questions, please do put them in the chat. We'd be more than happy to cover those as well. We are going to go straight from poll 2 into... Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wanted to say, and that answer on budget constraints, I think it's exactly what I mentioned before. And I think that this is why definitely like ask the channels, the vendors that you work with, if they can actually help you create. I can tell you that creating for the studio, for example, in terms of cost, it costs between sometimes playables 1K to even 5K just for one version. And this is definitely a cost that the developers and the clients can save. I'm sure that we're not the only ones, and I'm sure that the developers out there are doing it. So just use it.
No, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for that point. We are going to go straight into our third poll, I believe. Which to repeat just repeat the question out loud. Are you actively spending for retention/retargeting campaigns, and how do you decide what partner gets the bigger budget? So we'll give that a few minutes to let the chat answer. And in the interim, we've talked about acquiring users, and what comes next is just as crucial. We've talked about it already as well. Retaining them. Prepping for today, I was looking at AppsFlyer's Q3 2023 app retention benchmarks, and it showed that in day one, retention averages are about 22.5% for Android and around 27% for the iOS, and that's in the US market, casino category. By day 30, these numbers dropped to around 3.5% for Android and then 5% for iOS. So we're going to delve into that psychology of the user retention, for better and for worse. A very scary subject to talk about. But if you could share some insights or strategies on how you see the best way to boost those retention rates. And Faith, I'm going to come to you.
Sure. So, I mean, I think what David talked about is correct. Like, it's going to start with, how are you advertising the game? Like, what sort of user are you acquiring for the game? I think basic day one retention is about meeting the user expectations. So if the advertising is not accurately reflecting what the game is like, I think you're going to see really low user retention. And then it comes down to, how sticky the game is in terms of core play and developing events that utilize core gameplay. So this is always, especially when you're in the soft launch process for games, in their early life cycle, is always sort of the pull between, market and product, is, what are, are we as marketers getting the right people into the game? And then is the product having a game that reflects like what the user wants and giving them things to do? So we talked a little bit about, we can talk a little bit about things like LiveOps. I mentioned, there's 2 games I'm in right now, and what they've both done successfully is recognize that consumers want to play the game for varying amounts of time. They want an experience where they can feel rewarded after playing maybe just a couple of minutes, because maybe you're standing in line and you only have a few minutes. They want something that they can spend maybe a half hour, an hour with, and then they want something that they can play for a very long period of time, a couple hours, a couple of days, over a weekend. And so I think successful events within the app will address that. Like, I've seen login rewards tend to be very popular because it's the concept being, well, the user will come back, the player will come back every day to get these login rewards. But if that's not paired with something else, if that's not paired with a way for them to play longer in the game, then it's not going to be as successful. One of the trends I'm seeing in terms of encouraging things like increased playtime, but also encouraging in-app purchases, are more of those testing or trial periods for a thing that you can buy, whether it's a new hero in the game, whether it's an increase in the number of lives in the game, or something along those lines. Allowing the user to experience it, and then providing, the in-app purchase, I think, is something that, is people are seeing success with. So I do think, though, it comes down to always being willing to add new things to your game as well, because I have several games that the teams are working on right now. One is very new, one's like 14 years old, right? So you have to sort of look at your game and say, we can't sort of hold a sacred cow to this is what our game is and this is how it behaves. It always has to be reinventing, and I think that is one of the trends that we've seen for successful games over the past couple of years, is they've sort of reinvented themselves by adding new features and adding and really looking at why the consumer or the player wants to play their game, and trying to meet that objective.
Thank you very much, Faith. I think that almost try before you buy approach to maybe new characters, levels, power-ups is something that I've seen in the market, and as a casual consumer has absolutely gripped my attention. I'm going to go over to Helitz, and sort of love to see your insights. I'm going to take a guess and maybe say there's some retargeting elements to your sort of insights on this one.
Yeah, so I think, maybe two different things that I want to raise up. So first of all, I think you mentioned in the data that there is, and I think it's worth definitely, emphasizing that definitely we are seeing better numbers or higher retention numbers for iOS versus Android. I think that one important thing maybe to say and to emphasize is that we should definitely see iOS as an opportunity. There are a lot of solutions out there, different strategies to go and to use in terms of how to work with iOS today. The MMPs and the different vendors are actually supporting that. I think it's super, super important to know that iOS is there. And I can even share from our own work that we're even seeing 40% iOS as part of the mix on the pie. And I think it's important to mention that. One of the second maybe thing that I can mention about it, that if you do want to build a strategy to work on retention, it's understanding how, and I think Faith also talked about it. So understand your game, understand your audience, and slice and dice your audiences and know what you need to actually do in order to retain them. It's very different to have a strategy on retaining an X lifetime value or an X payer or non-payer, or a user that is retaining post X amount of days versus fewer amount of days. So I think that if you do build a strategy for growth, UA, by the way, and retargeting, if you do build a strategy that will touch both OS, that will touch the different segmentation that you are seeing and slicing and dicing the data in front of you, and you are treating every segment as you should in order to retain your users, I think this is a key. One of the trends that I am seeing lately that we're definitely testing out in the last year, it's very typical to retain users only on a higher stage in the funnel. A lot of the clients and developers are saying, okay, let's go and only look on the whales and let's make sure that we retain them. I think a different way of thinking that we're trying to push more and more is to say, it's great to go after the whales, but it's even better if you're actually able to get to these users in an earlier stage. Why? I talked about that before. You want to be cost effective, you want to pay less, and you are able to do that only in the earlier stages of the user flow. So I think that if you do have a strategy for non-payers from the first moment and up to a payer, and you're actually populating, you're feeding the flow as you go down the stages, and you treat every audiences separately and personalize the messaging, I think that that is the way to actually retain the users. So this would be probably my take, and make sure that you're not leaving money on the table. You're not just, focusing on one OS, on one country, and always making sure that you treat your full user flow and segment that into pieces and treat it as you should.
Thank you very much. I have to say, both of you so far have given us some cracking sound bites of what people should take away. Is like, if anything, just the little piece of advice you've heard throughout this, I think have been invaluable. David, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'm super agree with them. Those were like great insights. Of course, most of the points that they touched were like totally correct. I will talk a bit more about UA, which is my field and where I'm like more comfortable. But before doing that, I would like to mention one point that from my experience is key to retain the user in the long term and in an efficient and consistent way. And it's the moment when the user has to accept or deny the push notifications. I've been working with more than, 25 mobile games in the last years, and I can assure you that this moment, the conversion rate that you have for users that accept the push notifications, companies are not paying enough attention to that moment, because that happens very, very soon in the first open. And I feel that that moment can be much more optimized with different pop-ups, with different buttons, with different explanations, with videos, with whatever. But at the moment, it looks like most of people are just introducing the in-app screen with the message, hey, we are gonna send you push notifications. And in most of the cases, you're gonna get a no from the user, right? So I think that moment is gonna determine the success that you can have in the future to retain and reactivate your users. And it's something that over the last year, I'm seeing that companies are not taking care about. Then talking about UA, I would say that I'm not a big fan of running campaigns with narrow audiences, like for example, people who complete the tutorial but never achieve level 10. That's like a quick example, right? When you narrow the audience in your UA campaigns, you will see higher cost in your upper funnel metrics. That's 100% sure. That's like life. Nobody can like avoid that. So in order to get accurate insights about those users, you need to be patient. You need to wait a bit more than when you run like normal campaigns, because you are targeting existing users or users that already know you. So sometimes it can be worth to pay more for them, because in the long term, they will bring more value to your business. That's why the approach, the mentality to run those campaigns needs to be totally different than when you run campaigns for new users. However, even when you run campaigns for new users, if the algorithm detects that there are an existing user with possibilities of completing the action that you are optimizing for in your campaign, the algorithm will automatically retire the user, even when the campaign is for new users. That's something that most of the people don't know, but that happens. I mean, try to run a campaign in Facebook ads for new users, for people who complete the tutorial. You will get a lot of existing users that they still watch your ads. And that's because algorithms are getting smarter and smarter with the time. And that's maybe the reason why when you narrow the audience with specific segments, your cost usually goes up.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I am consciously aware of the time, so we're going to quickly look at the poll results from the last poll. Are you actively spending for retention retargeting campaigns, and how do you decide what partner to get the bigger budget? Looking at the results here, the most popular answer of which was no, they're currently not running retargeting retention campaigns, and I'm hoping some of the things you've heard today will certainly sort of reconsider that approach. And then do you allocate only to your sort of top performing partner, which is a trend I think we all typically see. I will give the panelists a quick second. Is there anything you'd like to add or comment on that poll results?
This is where the opportunity lies in. So yeah, I'm happy about it.
Fantastic. Excellent. In which case, we've talked a lot about strategy. I want to now take a pivot and sort of talk more about the ad tech side, which is obviously vital for successful marketing. And it's becoming more and more apparent that AI has been a go-to solution for many vendors, especially when tackling common challenges like rising user acquisition costs, resource constraints. What AI and machine learning tools can help marketers make a mobile game successful? And David, you're going to be my first ask on this one, if that's okay. I think you might be muted.
Yeah, sorry, I misclicked. So yeah, let me like summarize, because as a UA and ASO manager, I use a few of them. I would say that I have to separate between pure AI tools and AI features within classical tools that we use, right? Because they are like a complement of a tool. So if we talk about AI tools like pure AI, in my opinion, ChatGPT is the king. I mean, all the third-party apps that people are now building with its technology, with that technology, are just endless. I mean, there is a solution for everything. Actually, there is like one app that helps you to build your Scan 4.0 schema totally for free. This app was built by Lucas Moscon. So greetings from here, because he's also a Latin guy. He speaks Spanish. And this is like great, because apart from building your scan schema, for example, there are other applications to build like a script for your creatives in your UA campaigns. So ChatGPT applications are endless, but apart from that, you can also use Midjourney. I usually use this tool in order to give more context to the graphic designers and the video editors about the ideas that they have for me, for my creatives. So when I think about a new concept or a new idea that I want to promote, if I can use Midjourney to give more context, the graphic designer will be more accurate with my idea. So we will need less rounds of feedback and changing things. Then if we go with like the tools that I usually use at the SplitMetrics, like Acquire or UpRadar. At Acquire, I normally use the beta strategy, which is a machine learning feature where you just put a number based on your goal, and our machine learning is automatically optimizing all your bids for all your keywords automatically. This is awesome because if you work with Average Chats, you know that this is like the most time-demanding channel above all. Then we have in UpRadar another cool AI add-on, which is like the AI summary review. I think it's the name, which basically creates a list of your main advantages and the main complaints that the users are putting in the reviews for your app. But not only for your app, also for the app of your competitors. So in a quick glance, you can check why your users are complaining about, why they are like putting bad reviews, what features they are demanding for your app, and also in the competitors. So you can compare, for example, okay, so my users are complaining about that, but my competitor is offering that much better than me. Maybe I should improve this if I want to be in the same level. And that saves a lot of time because you can compare easily in a minute all the main points. You don't have to invest all the time reading each review. And yeah, that would be the summary here.
Excellent. I think it's a good opportunity for me to shamelessly plug a webinar that I hosted with Thomas, who founded AppRadar, one of our products in our ecosystem, where we actually went into how to utilize those AI tools to actually, utilize them and what kind of questions to ask, etc. So it'd be inappropriate if I didn't try to shamelessly plug my own webinar there. I will now go over to Helix. Would love to see your insight into what sort of tools you guys utilize and would recommend.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll try to be quick because I know that we're close on time, but I mean, definitely in terms of artificial intelligence, so AI and machine learning, and with and as being as a DSP, it's one of it's, I would say, a key. You cannot be in the space of the DSPs and not be able to work and progress to that stage. I can say that YouAppi as a company and probably the industry, I would say the mobile space, are using different AI tools, but two of the AI tools that we're actually focusing on. So one would be the likelihood of I would say the likelihood of the user re-engaging with the specific app according to a certain amount of signals and conditions. But that first very AI definitely tool that we're using is just to make sure that we're not only reacting to retroactively to the performance metrics that we're seeing, how many impressions, how many clicked, how many payments were transacted, cohorted, etc. The idea is to also make sure that you're able to calculate and evaluate the likelihood of that user to re-engage in advance before you manage to actually gain data. So once you're actually able to combine both the probability and including the learning data, and you can actually combine both, that is from our best practice, definitely the best. So that's one thing in terms of AI tools. The second that I think is definitely more even important, not more or as much for sure, it's, I would say, to the second AI is to make sure that you're the likelihood not on a user level but on a payment level, because we're very much focusing on gaming developers. We want to make sure that we're actually very much optimal on when are we actually wanting to reach that user, and even if we thought that that user is interesting, there's a gap, there's a stage that we can decide in the auction if we want to bid or not. So at that specific stage, AI tool, another layer that will tell you, are you optimal and when do you actually want to bid on that specific user? This is another AI tool that we have in place, and it definitely helps us at the end of the day focus on ROI and retention type of activities. So these would probably be the two that I would, choose as contributing the most.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We are going to go to Faith, as I think you have a very interesting view. All the questions that have been asked in the chat, we've seen loads of great questions. Just to reiterate, our team have captured all of those, and we will answer them in an email after today's session. Faith, I know you guys operate a very much build it in-house approach when it comes to your MarTech stack. That's a very unique view to what we've just talked about here. Can you maybe give us some insight into how that strategy has worked and the challenges that the audience should keep in mind?
Sure. So I think there are definitely some benefits from building in-house tools. I think one of the biggest ones we've seen is that you can make sure that all of your channels have similar function and features, and that they can deploy so we can deploy across like sort of multiple channels. So what we use for UA can also be used for user engagement and things like that. So there's a lot more consistency because we're not going out and acquiring vendors for each, for each different platform. I think the challenge can be, and also I will say, like, you can customize, right? Like when you go out to purchase something, most of the time you have to choose like whatever it is that vendor has decided are the most important features for your tools. From like sort of the downside of that, we're talking a lot about AI here, is that when you build in-house tools, they have to be prioritized against every other thing that the company is working on. And so it's harder sometimes to get like, what is the newest thing going, what is the newest available technology, like getting them to build in something with AI then has to be prioritized against getting content into the game or getting an update. And so I think that is probably potentially a big drawback, is if you go with a vendor, like they've already looked at the industry, they've already said, what is it, where is it going, and what is everybody looking for, and have included it potentially in their products. So there are pluses. I would say there are pluses and minuses, but I will also say, echoing what our other panelists have said, is there's a lot of free stuff out there too. Even if you're building in-house, make sure you go take advantage of all of the free versions of the different tools. We haven't touched on it, but like the different research platforms as well. Usually, there's free versions for research on, what's going on in the app industry, what's going on with competitors, and things like that. So I would definitely take a look and see what's out there that you can get for a very no to low cost.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We are out of time. I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to our panelists for their incredible insights, and extremely grateful for your participation, as well as to the attendees in the chat. You've been asking some fantastic questions that I'm sure we all look forward to digging into after this session. There is a final poll that is live, so if you do have time, please do complete that. And thank you so much for joining us, and I wish everyone a wonderful rest of your week. It's been a pleasure. I think I only told 4 bad jokes, so as it goes, that's quite a good average for me. Have a lovely rest of your week, guys.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a nice rest of the week. Bye.
Bye-bye.